Hey everyone, and thanks for jumping back into the Cryptoverse. Today, we're going to talk about the Altcoin Reckoning. If you guys like the content, make sure you subscribe to the channel, give the video a thumbs up, and also check out the sale on Into the Cryptoverse Premium at intothecryptoverse.com. Link is in the description below. You can lock in that rate as long as you don't cancel. More importantly, though, we actually have another matter, a business matter to discuss, and that is, it is time for the NCAA tournament, and I'm a fan. And just like I did last year, we are going to have an Into the Basketball verse tournament challenge. So if you want to, find the link in the description below. Winner will receive a free 1-year membership to Into the Cryptoverse Premium. So it's all just for fun. Go ahead and check the link in the description below, and you can submit a bracket, and then we'll see who wins. All right, and I believe you need to get it submitted by tomorrow because the games are starting relatively soon. So make sure you do this today. Okay, get it out today, and then we can follow along and see who wins. We did the same thing last year, and I thought it was fun, and so we'll do it again this year as well. Now on to less important things. We can talk about the Altcoin Reckoning. Now, if you follow this channel, for any period of time, I've actually been a big proponent of the Altcoin Reckoning, the continuation of the Altcoin Reckoning for well over a year now. And in fact, I did become somewhat skeptical of the altcoin market in the summer of 2021, and I wasn't a huge fan of getting back into the altcoin market. If I'm being completely honest, I felt more comfortable with Bitcoin and ETH at that time. This was summer of 2021 during the summer lull, but we did see that altcoins had a bit more left in them. With that said, I do think it would be prudent for everyone to remain somewhat skeptical of the altcoin market at this phase, right? And I want to talk about, again, the reasons why and so on and so forth. So again, this chart here is total 3. So total 3 is everything besides Bitcoin and ETH. And we've actually had a very similar pattern play out on total 3 in the last cycle, and that is namely the idea of just sort of putting in lower highs for a while, but also coming to sort of a point where we ultimately break down. So if we were to sort of connect the dots here, what you'll notice is that the total 3, so the altcoin market essentially just, ping-ponged around in this descending wedge, and then everyone got super excited back over here before we had the final plunge. And it was sort of this plunge that marked the true bottom on the altcoin market. And you can see that it ended up bottoming out at around a market cap of 30 billion. Now, right now, the market cap of the altcoin market is around 366 billion. So it's actually quite a bit higher than where it was, of course, back over here at this bottom. And I don't think we're going to get anywhere close to 30 billion. But be that as it may, one of the things that you might want to take a look at here with respect to the altcoin market is that it's doing something very similar in terms of, sort of in this descending wedge and kind of getting people excited once again, but it hasn't really broken out yet. Okay, there's not really been a sustained breakout here. And if you were to, again, connect the dots, you might suspect that if the altcoin market does roll over here and get that plunge into the depths of the cryptoverse, that could very well be the opportunity that which only comes around once every few years. Okay, now admittedly, there's going to be a lot of people that assume that this has already occurred, and always, as I've mentioned, admittedly, they could be right. I certainly do not have a crystal ball. I cannot tell you for certain as to whether anything specific is going to happen. But in the face of a potential recession, it's hard for me to imagine that the altcoin market is going to provide any refuge. Within crypto, I would imagine that Bitcoin will continue to outperform the rest of the market, more or less. You're always going to find a few altcoins that outperform. I know this because I've seen it happen many, many cycles, and then every time I put out a video like this, I always get a few comments saying, well, what about this altcoin? Yes, I know. There's always a few that outperform. But the market, the total 3 market as a whole, so the altcoin market as a whole is likely not going to outperform Bitcoin. Remember, Bitcoin leads the next bull market, right? We know that. It'll well, I guess we don't know anything specific, but we can look at history and say, well, Bitcoin's likely to lead the next bull market. But if Bitcoin has to go back down, then the altcoin market can get absolutely slaughtered during that period. And it's a worthwhile thing to consider. Now, right now, total 3 is at 366 billion. To come back down to the bottom of this channel would put it around 272. Note, however, that last time we broke down below this channel, the alt market broke about 31% lower than the bottom of the wedge. So I mean, a 30% move to the downside would actually put the altcoin market at just below 200 billion, which from the current valuation would actually still represent a 47% drop in the overall valuation of the altcoin market. Now, perhaps you think that this is being a bit over the top, but when you're looking at treasury yields dropping this quickly, and when you're looking at sort of the suspected rate hiking cycle by the Federal Reserve and how, there's not, the market thinks they're going to start cutting soon. Now, here's the thing. Powell has been saying forever that they're going to go higher for longer and that there will be pain. The market is trying to call his bluff, but we're about to see what's what and who's who. Is Powell going to do what he said and hold the rates higher for longer? Because here's the thing. Rate cuts are a sign that the economy is weak. Normally, when the Fed is cutting rates, the market is not doing that well. I mean, this is just what we've seen in history. I think a lot of people think that rate cuts are a good thing, but in reality, rate cuts historically are not a good thing, at least in the short term for the market. Now, medium to long term, of course, rate cuts will be good, but in the same way that it took about a year for rate hikes to propagate through the economy. Again, it's been about 1 year since the first 25 basis point rate hike. You could argue that we're only just now starting to feel the full effects of that. It's also going to take a while for rate cuts to be felt as well. And we don't even know when that's going to occur. Right now, the market says we're going to get a rate cut as early as June. But if Powell meant what he said, then the market is overly optimistic about that. Okay? So we'll have to wait and see on that. In the face of a potential recession, which generally occurs when you do get sort of the uninversion of the yield curve, and we talked about this some yesterday, so I just want to remind you. But if you look at, say, the Treasury yield spreads, and we can go look at the 2-year and the 10-year, you can see that it's actually moving up quite quickly. And upon the uninversion, that's normally where you actually get a recession. Right? Look at the 3-month and the 10-year as well. That's normally where you get the recession. It's not while they're inverted. This is why I've continued to say, there's not really clear evidence yet that we're in one, right? A recession. But it's upon the uninversion that you typically get one. And normally, when it uninverts and you see this occur, I mean, it's not typically a good thing for risk assets. Now, I'm actually of the opinion that, that you could see altcoins and the like bottom before equities. I think that crypto has an ability to get where it's going quicker than the equity market. History shows us that as well. And so I could see that actually playing out once again. But the reality that we're sort of still facing here with total 3 is that it still is a very similar pattern as to what we saw back over here. And these types of moves, just like the one we saw that started in Q3 2018, right? It gets everyone excited, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be sustained. The relative weakness of the altcoin market is quite apparent with respect to Bitcoin, because total 3 looks like this, right? However, if you were to go take a look at Bitcoin, so let's go pull Bitcoin up and look a bit closer at that. If you were to look at Bitcoin, it's already broken out of that of sort of that downtrend channel. It actually back tested it. Now, it doesn't mean it can't continue to back test it, right? I mean, it could sort of bounce around up here for a while, then back test it again, right? I mean, this is a possibility for Bitcoin, but the fact that it's actually broken out shows a lot of relative strength of Bitcoin with respect to the altcoin market. So if Bitcoin is unable to trend higher for a sustained period of time, the altcoin market still finds itself more or less between a rock and a hard place. Like, it hasn't broken out. The altcoin market still appears relatively weak. I understand that altcoin pumps get everyone back, get everyone excited, but you certainly have to be careful. And one mistake that a lot of people made in 2019 was, after Bitcoin rallied, was assuming that the altcoin market would rally after Bitcoin. So if you're familiar with Bitcoin cycles, like if you look at 2017, you look at 2021, after Bitcoin's rally, we know the altcoin market went parabolic. But the macro conditions are not similar to 2021. They're not really similar to 2019 either, but they're more similar to 2019 than they are to 2021. And what we know is that after Bitcoin peaked in 2019, right here, the altcoin market essentially just went down with it. The altcoin market did not hold up at all, and so the assumption that the altcoin market would have gone parabolic after Bitcoin went, went on its own parabola back in 2019 would have been would not have been a sound assumption. And so you could see people fall into that trap again, where they think just because Bitcoin has rallied on up, that they might assume that the altcoin market is going to go on a fairly substantial run. But the reality, and the continued reality that we face, is that that's not really true here. Take a look at this. In fact, on the day, let me scroll this one down. On the day, Bitcoin is actually up and the altcoin market is down. And this is what I've said many times. The altcoin market is facing the idiosyncratic risk of the altcoin market is a lot higher than Bitcoin. It doesn't mean that Bitcoin can't go down. I think that it probably will, but it can certainly hold a lot longer than the altcoin market can. And if Bitcoin were to rally on up higher than where it's already gone, it doesn't necessarily mean that the altcoin market is going to keep pace. And if Bitcoin just rolls over here, I think the altcoin market can get wrecked quite quickly. Furthermore, Bitcoin could go sideways and the altcoin market could get wrecked. Again, look at what's going on today, right? Bitcoin's up, the altcoin market is down. And not just down a little, 3 to 4%. Maybe that's a little, maybe that's not a lot for some people, but 3-4%, right? It adds up. Furthermore, the alt Bitcoin pairs, which are arguably the more important aspect to look at, and also the alt Ether pairs, but not to the same extent. But the alt Bitcoin pairs are still losing value. Okay, you go take a look at Ether Bitcoin, and it's down about 6% on the week, 6 or 7% on the week. What's interesting is that this candle right here is a very similar breakdown candle as to where it started back over here in May of 2022. And also very similar as to where it sort of broke down over here in July of 2018. I still do remain quite bearish on the Ethereum Bitcoin valuation. And you can see that on other valuations, such as ADA Bitcoin, it's breaking down below prior support. The Bitcoin rallies at this phase of the cycle do not necessarily precede an altcoin rally. What they're more likely to do is get altcoins off of their Bitcoin support levels, so that when Bitcoin drops or just goes sideways, the altcoin market really has nowhere to hide. And the most likely direction for a lot of the altcoins on their Bitcoin pairs still remains down. ADA Bitcoin is a great example. Solana Bitcoin, again, another example. I would suspect that you're going to see Solana come back in to some lower valuations. Again, prior support ended up holding resistance. Prior support here ended up holding resistance. And it's always possible that it holds support here, but I think the base case, until we see some more sustained changes in the macro, is that it could in fact put in a new low. You'll see the same thing across the board, right? Like Avalanche Bitcoin is getting back down to this trend line. It could break back up, but ultimately I think the direction it's going to go is down. Whether it's here or whether it occurs right now is not really that concerning to me. Furthermore, if you want to take a look at say BNB Bitcoin, that one continues to slowly break down as well. Dot Bitcoin continues to slowly break down and put in new lows for this phase of the cycle, and so on and so forth. So we are still continuing to see the deterioration of the altcoin market, not only on their USD pairs, but also on their Bitcoin pairs, more importantly on their Bitcoin pairs. And I know a lot of people don't care about their Bitcoin pairs, but I'm telling you, the sooner you start valuing your portfolio in satoshis, the more this market will actually make sense, right? So, so what if some of these altcoins have not yet put in new lows on their USD pairs, right? So let's take an example for Dot. Dot has not put in a new low yet. I mean, its low was around 426, but the point is that it still has significantly devalued on its Bitcoin pair and it's putting in new lows. So the idea that I'm trying to convey once again is that getting into the altcoin market when the idiosyncratic risk is so much higher right now, especially with altcoin or with regulations in general, especially as we stare at the potential face of a recession, the altcoin market just does not make sense, in my opinion. I mean, I know it's easy to sort of point and laugh at me anytime we get a rally in the altcoin market, but the reality of the situation is that a lot of these altcoins continue to go lower on their Bitcoin pairs, and you could point to their USD pairs and say they're holding up, and they are right now. But the reality is they have pushed lower on their Bitcoin pairs, and this is the point, right? If you're going to take on more risk in the altcoin market, your expectation should be that you're going to get a higher return because you're taking on more risk. If you take on more risk and the expectation is that you're going to get a lower return than you would with Bitcoin, then what's the point? I mean, just sign me up for the blue chip and make sure I have some cash in hand in case these altcoin markets nuke like they did back several years ago. And I think that's the way I would navigate it. Of course, it's not financial advice, but it's just something that I think is worthwhile to continue to point out over and over and over again, because again, for me, it took a while to recognize the importance of valuing these things on their Bitcoin pairs. Take Solana, for example. I mean, it is down a ton from the peak, right? It went down 97%. It's down 92% now. Now, even though it's down 92% right now, and we also know that Bitcoin went down, it's also down on its Bitcoin pair, which Bitcoin also went down. But Solana Bitcoin is down 81% on its Bitcoin pair. Forget the US dollar. So how do you protect yourself within the cryptoverse? If you're assuming no, if we're not talking about cash, we're not talking about stable coins or maybe unstable coins, if you will. We're talking about, within the cryptoverse of risk assets, how do you protect yourself from the deterioration of the altcoin market? And Bitcoin is generally the safe haven. At this phase, and that's not to say that Bitcoin can't go down lower on its USD pairs. It's just to point out, look, a lot of these alts continue to bleed on their Bitcoin pairs, and they're likely going to continue to bleed on their Bitcoin pairs. Furthermore, even if your biggest counterpoint is that you think the bottom is in for Bitcoin, which, maybe you're right, but if you're right, so what, right? I mean, Bitcoin bottomed in December 2018 when ADA Bitcoin was at 800 satoshis, but ADA didn't bottom on its Bitcoin pair until late 2019. So you could speculate that the altcoin market, even if the bottom is in for Bitcoin, which is no guarantee, could still drop, right? It could still easily drop. And in fact, it did in 2019. And this drop here came after the Bitcoin rally, right, of 2019. Yeah, and it went down into September and October. So I think the reality is a lot of these altcoins are still overvalued on their Bitcoin pairs. The Altcoin Reckoning is not going to last forever. And, I every time I make a video on this, and inevitably we'll see another pump in the altcoin market at some point. It can lead you to question sort of like, well, is it going to happen or is it not? But when you take a step back and you ignore all the day-to-day noise, what do you notice? A lot of these altcoins on their Bitcoin pairs, there's one direction they're headed, and it's down. ADA Bitcoin is down. Now, just so you're aware, I'm not trying to cherry pick. I know that some outperform. Matic has been one of them. Now, it doesn't mean it's going to continue, and recently it has started to pull back in here, and I believe it's actually now below its 20-week SMA. But yes, there's always some that hold up better than others. So I don't really need to be reminded about that. I'm fully aware of this sort of assessment, but we need it's important to be careful, I think, with the altcoin market, because it can move down quickly on Bitcoin pairs, and if the Ether Bitcoin valuation falls, Um, if it falls too much lower, note that this weekly candle over here started at 707 and it ended at 603. And then this one here started at 718 and right now it's already at 669. So, I mean, if it wants to continue to come down, it still has some room even this week to go down below, well below these levels. Now, I mean, we do have the Shanghai hard fork coming up, so perhaps there'll be some type of interest in that. But even so, I mean, I think the macro forces are still very much at play here and are something that is worthwhile to consider. And then finally, you can see again that the dominance of Bitcoin continues to slowly grind higher, despite so many calls for it not to. Throughout the cryptoverse, despite all of it, just keeps going up, right? And it's likely going to keep going up for months. Is what's likely going to happen. By the time you get out into the third quarter, I think it could be over. Okay, so by the time we get to Q3, the Altcoin Reckoning that we've been talking about since Q1 of 2022, this reckoning that we've discussed for over a year, it might finally be over by the third quarter of this year. So in about 6 more months, it could be, and it might not be that long. It could be 4 or 5 months, but I think we can kind of see the light at the end of the tunnel for the Altcoin Reckoning, but I don't think it's over yet. And I think we're sort of building up into the crescendo. Don't be, just because you get a rally doesn't mean it can't happen. I mean, if Bitcoin, and again, if Bitcoin pops back up to 26K or something, I mean, this is just likely going to make the dominance even stronger, right? I mean, it's just going to, because the altcoin market is having trouble here catching a bid. Again, Bitcoin was up on the day. At least when I checked it earlier. I mean, it might be down right now, but when I first started making this video, it was up on the day. Now it's slightly down, but the altcoin market is down quite a bit more. And again, it's the flight to safety includes within crypto is Bitcoin and arguably the stablecoin market. But if the stablecoin market isn't so stable, then people are going to go back out to cash, which is only going to send the dominance higher if the stablecoin market cap is going down. Now, I don't really know. I mean, if we go take a look at USDT plus USDC market cap and we sort of zoom in here, you can actually see that it's coming down, right? So it's coming down. So that's also going to help send the dominance of Bitcoin higher. I mean, if the expectation is that, well, if the stablecoin market is going up, then, and this is only capturing 2 of them, but if it's going up, then that could help explain away some of the reasons why the dominance was sort of stuck at similar levels. But if the stablecoin market, thanks to regulation, is going to start coming back down, then when people get out of the altcoin market and they don't put it in stables, if they put it either in Bitcoin or in cash, it's just going to send the dominance even higher. So this is where we stand today. We've been talking about this for a long time. Hopefully it's been useful to you. I don't mean to just sort of hammer this in, but it is it's an important lesson in the cryptoverse to learn, and the sooner you learn it, the better. The sooner I learned it, I was so much better off, because you just value your portfolio in Bitcoin. If you prefer Ethereum, you can value your portfolio in ETH, but I think the better way to do it is Bitcoin. Secondary way to do it is ETH, and just watch your portfolio evaluation if you're just sitting on 10 different altcoins. Now, I mean, I don't want to make this video to sort of scare everyone into going and doing this, but I mean, we've talked about this for a long time. Okay, so we are getting pretty late into this. I think that the Altcoin Reckoning could last for another few months, but sooner rather than later, like I'm going to have to, we're going to have to sort of flip back. But I don't think it's time yet. I still think the Altcoin Reckoning is in play, and I think it's going to remain in play for months to come. Again, if you guys like the content, make sure you subscribe. We do have Into the Cryptoverse Premium sale going on. But more importantly, don't forget to check out the Into the Basketballverse bracket challenge. Fill out a bracket. The winner will get a 1-year subscription to Into the Cryptoverse. Link for that will be down in the pinned comment or in the description below. We'll wrap it up there. Thank you guys for tuning in. I'll see you next time. Bye.